The first thing one notices about the invisible child is not their absence, but the space they leave behind, a silence that lingers longer than it should. They are not the child who breaks dishes or shouts in the hallway, yet their voice, when it rises, seems almost to tremble against the walls. In the earliest moments of life, recognition is a quiet but profound force. When a child moves through the world and finds that gaze of acknowledgement missing, something subtle but permanent begins to take root. It is not neglect in its harshest form. It is the everyday failing to see, to hold, to witness. And it is in these unnoticed moments that the invisible child begins to learn who they are and who they might never become. They learn that their thoughts, though vivid and alive, are not worth the time of others, that their feelings, though intense, are better folded inward. Each day, small silences accumulate into patterns: a parent's hurried glance, a teacher's distracted nod, a friend's fleeting attention. All whisper the same lesson, that existence can be overlooked. And yet, the invisible child does exist. They are present in the quiet corners, the spaces between laughter, the rooms where echoes of attention never reach. There is a resilience there, delicate and fragile, like sunlight filtered through a thin curtain. But even resilience can carry the weight of invisibility. In adolescence, the invisible child finds the world both larger and lonelier. They wander through crowded hallways and social circles, noticing everything, absorbing the subtleties that others miss. They hear the unspoken rules, the judgments in silence, the passing glances that decide who belongs and who does not. They watch, often from the edges, a careful observer of human interaction, learning the mechanics of attention without ever feeling it fully directed at themselves. In this watching, there is wisdom, but there is also pain. Every unnoticed success, every overlooked voice, reinforces a narrative that whispers in quiet, insistent tones. You are less than, you are not enough. And yet, the invisible child persists. They become skilled at blending, at making themselves small to fit a world that has rarely noticed them. Emotions in the invisible child are profound, yet disciplined. Joy is muted by habit, excitement is measured, and sadness is often performed in private. They carry the duality of longing and self-protection, learning early that visibility can invite both connection and disappointment. There is an acute understanding of others' moods, a sensitivity honed through necessity. Yet this same sensitivity can isolate as the invisible child navigates a world that seems perpetually one step ahead in acknowledgement while they remain behind, unseen. They begin to internalize the gaze of the world as a judgment, a lens that never quite rests on their own worth. The self becomes an observer of itself, always analyzing, always negotiating for recognition that rarely comes. In adulthood, the patterns solidified in childhood manifest in subtle but powerful ways. The invisible child grows into a person who may excel in work, art, or thought, but who often struggles with the quiet ache of being unseen. Relationships carry a tension between desire and fear. The desire to connect deeply, the fear that intimacy will reveal the same pattern of invisibility, the same dismissal that once defined childhood. Social gatherings can feel like a theater in which the invisible child is both audience and actor, performing the role of being present while wondering if anyone truly notices. It is in these interactions that the legacy of being unseen becomes palpable, not through dramatic failures, but through the slow, persistent sense that one's existence is optional to the world. Memory, too, becomes a terrain marked by gaps. The invisible child recalls events with a heightened attention to detail. Who was present, what was said, the expressions that fleetingly acknowledged them, or did not. These memories form a mosaic of partial recognition, a catalogue of moments where the world's eyes barely rested on them. They remember the small disappointments more vividly than the triumphs, For the mind of the invisible child learns early that omission speaks more loudly than celebration. Yet, paradoxically, this same attunement can yield extraordinary insight. The invisible child often becomes profoundly empathetic, capable of noticing subtleties that others overlook, understanding emotions that go unspoken. There is an intimate knowledge of absence, of longing, of the silent negotiations that shape human life. The body, too, carries the history of invisibility. Muscle tension, posture, and expression often reflect years of cautious observation, the learned art of minimizing presence to avoid negative attention. The invisible child may avoid eye contact or speak softly, habits that once ensured safety or survival, but later become ingrained behaviors in social and professional life. The physical self, like the emotional self, carries the story of neglect and adaptation. There is a quiet wisdom in these physical cues, a language developed to navigate the world without drawing unwanted focus. Yet, in moments of stillness, these bodies remember the yearning for recognition, the desire to be held, acknowledged, and affirmed. In professional spaces, the invisible child often channels their gifts into work that requires deep observation, empathy, and reflection. Creativity, analysis, and quiet leadership can flourish, yet so can self-doubt and anxiety. The fear of being overlooked persists, sometimes invisibly, in decisions about speaking up, advocating, or claiming success. Recognition may come, but it often arrives belatedly, filtered through lenses that underestimate their early struggles. And still, they continue to contribute, to create, to love. The invisible child's impact, though subtle, is profound, shaped by a lifetime of observing what others miss. Relationships, however, can remain the most complicated terrain. Love is both balm and mirror, reflecting the patterns ingrained since childhood. Trust is cautious, vulnerability is measured, and the desire for connection competes with the fear of invisibility repeating itself. Intimacy may feel dangerous because being truly seen risks exposure to the same neglect that defined early years. Yet, when the invisible child encounters someone capable of seeing them fully, the experience can be transformative, almost luminous. Recognition, acknowledgement, and empathy become not just validation, but revelation. In these moments, the invisible child learns that visibility is not merely granted. It is cultivated, nurtured, and sometimes fiercely protected. The invisible child's mind is often a rich, complex landscape. Creativity, imagination, and reflection flourish in the spaces where attention is absent. They develop an internal world that is vivid, nuanced, and deeply human. But this inner life, while a sanctuary, can also become a prison if it replaces the expectation of connection. Solitude can be comforting, even necessary, but it also serves as a constant reminder of the patterns formed early in life. The invisible child must navigate the tension between the gifts of introspection and the persistent ache for recognition, learning to balance inner fulfillment with the need for external acknowledgement. Healing, when it comes, is quiet. It rarely arrives as a sudden revelation, but rather as a slow, unfolding awareness that visibility can be claimed, that acknowledgement can be sought and given, and that the patterns of childhood do not have to dictate every interaction. Therapy, relationships, creative work, or self-reflection may become instruments of transformation, allowing the invisible child to gradually inhabit space, assert presence, and recognize the inherent worth of their own experience. Yet, even in healing, traces remain: a carefulness, a heightened sensitivity, a quiet vigilance born of years of invisibility. And perhaps the most profound insight of all is that the invisible child never truly disappears. They remain, interwoven with every moment, every relationship, every achievement, carrying both the pain of being unseen and the unique perspective it engenders. There is a paradoxical beauty in this persistence. The invisible child, once overlooked, becomes a person deeply attuned to the subtleties of human life, capable of extraordinary empathy and insight. Their journey is a testament to both vulnerability and resilience, a quiet narrative of human endurance that unfolds slowly, poetically, across the landscape of a lifetime. In reflecting on the invisible child, one begins to understand the significance of small gestures. A nod, a smile, a genuine question. These are not trivial. They are threads that, if offered consistently, can begin to weave a fabric of recognition strong enough to alter a lifetime. Each act of acknowledgement, however modest, resonates with echoes from the earliest years, reminding the invisible child, and all of us, that seeing and being seen is both a gift and a necessity. The invisible child teaches us about the subtle mechanics of human attention, about the quiet architecture of validation and neglect. They reveal how silence can shape identity and how absence, more than presence, often informs the deepest aspects of selfhood. They demonstrate that invisibility is not merely a state of being, but a psychological pattern, one that can ripple across decades, shaping emotions, choices, and relationships in both overt and subtle ways. Yet, there is hope in understanding. To witness the invisible child is to offer recognition where it was once denied, to listen deeply, to validate experience, to simply be present. These acts counteract the patterns of neglect that may have defined early life. And in doing so, they remind the invisible child and ourselves that visibility is not merely a social reward, but a profound human necessity, central to the formation of identity, self-worth, and belonging. Ultimately, the invisible child exists within us all. They are the part of the self that has known neglect, the voice that feared speaking, the longing for acknowledgement that persists quietly beneath the surface. In understanding them, we recognize our own need for presence, our own vulnerability to being unseen, and our capacity for empathy. The invisible child is a mirror, reflecting both the fragility and resilience of human life, a poetic reminder that attention and recognition are as vital as air and water, shaping the contours of identity across a lifetime. And so, the story of the invisible child is not merely a tale of suffering, nor solely a chronicle of resilience. It is a meditation on human experience, on the profound consequences of being seen or not being seen, on the delicate architecture of the self. It is an invitation to quiet reflection, to the slow awareness that our actions ripple in ways invisible to us, that each gaze carries meaning, that each silence leaves an imprint, and in this awareness lies the gentle, transformative power of compassion, the power to recognize the invisible, and in doing so to honor the full humanity of every life.